One woman's sensuous voice dragged a nation to its knees in the golden age of radio, when words whispered into a microphone could start revolutions and scandals. On December 12, 1937, blonde bombshell Mae West redefined sexuality in America with 12 words that changed broadcasting forever. Little did the world realize that those 12 words would start the most dramatic radio censorship war in history, turning a comedic sketch into a cultural earthquake that still resonates today. This is the secret account of how Mae West became the first performer ever permanently banned from American radio, and why the reality is more stunning than anyone expected. With a gilded dagger wrapped in silk and scandal, Mae West made her mark on American society before that tragic December night. Mary Jane West, born in Brooklyn in 1893, became a woman who claimed her sexuality so totally that she made men shudder and women rethink propriety. By the 1930s, Mae West was more than a star. She broke every societal norm. Her golden blonde hair shone like a halo, but her words held evil. Why not visit me sometime? Become more than a slogan. It was a protest against Depression-era America's moral shackles. Hollywood execs knew they had lightning in a bottle, but they soon discovered lightning was uncontrollable. Mae West's films pushed the limits of allowable content so far that they helped create the motion picture production code, Hollywood's moral code for decades. She transformed provocation into an art form, making millions laugh and the moral guardians of America sleepless. But radio differed. Radio was personal. Radio sent messages to America's living rooms, bedrooms, and kitchens. A single woman could reach millions of people on radio, where families gathered and children listened with their parents. Mae West was about to realize that the medium was more potent than any cinema screen. Radio networks approached her in 1937, when her cinema career peaked. They desired Mae West's charm, but they didn't realize they were inviting a cyclone into their carefully regulated world. A clash between artistic freedom and moral authority would change American entertainment forever. Invitations arrived like golden tickets in corporate letterhead. NBC's Chase and Sanborn Hour, one of radio's most esteemed variety shows, wanted Mae West to join Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. The match appeared ideal. America's most famous comedian and its most renowned sex symbol. Network executives didn't realize they'd set off a cultural time bomb. In private, NBC executives believed they could harness Mae West's star power while retaining her notorious edge inside radio content limitations. They would learn the most costly broadcasting lesson. Mae West was uncontrollable. The show's creators created a mild comedy sketch. In a seemingly harmless Garden of Eden parody, Mae West flirted with Charlie McCarthy as herself. She received a script with modest innuendos and playful banter that had worked for other guest actors. Mae West did not guest star before. Their meticulously sterilized script included suggestions, not guidelines. She saw a chance to do what she always did best: push boundaries until they snapped like twigs under her irrepressible personality. The rehearsals should have warned. Mae West's delivery made even innocent lines menacing. She had the capacity to make commonplace words resonate with something primal through her timing, inflection, and meaning. It was everywhere, obvious. However, network executives believed they could control the uncontrollable. Americans marked December 12, 1937 on their calendars. At the radio, families waited for two entertainment realms to collide. Instead, they got a moment that divided the nation and changed American broadcasting forever. The studio lights darkened as Mae West took the microphone that December evening, her presence filling the room like costly perfume and electricity. Radio listeners never saw her form-fitting gown that hugged every curve. Only her confidence and how cloth could turn a woman into a weapon would be heard. The sketch began innocently. Edgar Bergen's wisecracking wooden dummy Charlie McCarthy found himself in the Garden of Eden, where Mae West played Eve. The audience laughed at the notion, expecting light comedy. Mae West had different ideas. Her performance made Bergen's carefully constructed lines seem to speak directly to Teating as the skit progressed. His spirit. Every word she stated was double meaning. Every pause holds potential. She read more than lines. Her voice-only seduction masterclass was underway. Everything changed then. Adam, played by Charlie McCarthy, made a harmless Apple quip. With the timing of a skilled comedian and the instincts of a born provocateur, Mae West responded with a purr that seemed to reach through radio speakers and caress every American listener. Want to try this apple? 12 words, 12 simple, seemingly innocent words that contained within them the power to topple the entire moral framework of American broadcasting. But it wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it, the way her voice wrapped around those words like silk around steel, the way she made apples sound like the most dangerous fruit that had ever existed. The studio audience erupted. Some laughed, others gasped. But everyone understood they had just witnessed something unprecedented. Mae West had taken a children's Bible story and transformed it into something so charged with sexuality that it seemed to change the very air in the room. Before Mae West had even finished her sketch, telephone switchboards across America began lighting up like Christmas trees in hell. The call started as a trickle during the commercial break, then became a flood, then transformed into a tsunami of moral outrage that crashed over NBC's headquarters with biblical fury. Disgusting, screamed voices from small-town America. Corrupting our children, shouted concerned parents who had been listening with their families. This is what's wrong with our country, declared moral guardians, who saw in Mae West's 12 words the beginning of civilization's end. But the calls weren't uniformly negative. Mixed in with the outrage were voices of support, people who recognized Mae West's performance for what it truly was, a masterpiece of entertainment that dared to acknowledge the complexity of human nature. Brilliant, whispered some callers. Finally, someone who isn't afraid to be real, said others. The radio stations themselves were caught completely off guard. Station managers who had gone home expecting to read routine ratings reports the next morning instead found themselves fielding emergency calls from advertisers, religious leaders, and politicians demanding explanations, apologies, and immediate action. In newsrooms across the country, editors who had planned quiet Sunday editions suddenly found themselves with the biggest story of the year. MA Scandalizes Radio would scream from headlines coast to coast. But the real story wasn't just Mae West's performance. It was America's reaction to it, a reaction that revealed deep fault lines in the nation's moral landscape. Religious leaders took to their pulpits that very Sunday, condemning not just Mae West, but the entire entertainment industry for what they saw as a coordinated assault on American values. Women's groups organized letter-writing campaigns. Politicians began drafting legislation. The 12 words had become 12 seismic shockwaves that were reshaping the cultural landscape in real time. What Mae West had done in those few moments wasn't just entertainment. It was a Rorschach test that forced America to confront its own relationship with sexuality, morality, and the power of words to shape reality itself. Dawn broke over NBC's offices on December 13, 1937, like the sun rising over a battlefield. The network's executives arrived to find their building surrounded by reporters, protesters, and curious onlookers drawn by the overnight sunset, ion that had exploded from their radio waves. Inside the building, chaos reigned supreme. Switchboards continued their relentless ringing as thousands of calls poured in from every corner of America. Secretaries worked in shifts, logging complaints that ranged from politely worded concerns to threats of boycotts and worse. The mailroom prepared for what would become an avalanche of letters that would continue for weeks. The Federal Communications Commission's phones were ringing just as frantically. Government officials who had been enjoying a quiet weekend suddenly found themselves thrust into the center of a national controversy that demanded immediate attention. The FCC's offices, normally quiet temples of bureaucratic routine, transformed overnight into war rooms where the future of American broadcasting would be decided. NBC's top brass convened emergency meetings that stretched through the day and deep into the night. These weren't ordinary corporate strategy sessions. These were crisis management meetings unlike anything the broadcasting industry had ever seen. Lawyers huddled with executives, public relations specialists worked frantically on damage control, and accountants calculated the potential financial impact of what was already being called the Mae West incident. The Chase and Sanborn Hour sponsors were apoplectic. The coffee company that had lent its name to the show suddenly found its brand associated with what moral guardians were calling the most scandalous moment in radio history. Emergency board meetings were called, advertising campaigns were halted, and damage control became the only priority. But perhaps most tellingly, Mae West herself was nowhere to be found. The woman who had caused this earthquake had simply vanished, leaving behind only the echoes of her 12 words, and a nation struggling to process what had just happened to T. Ear carefully ordered world. Within 48 hours of Mae West's radio appearance, America's moral crusaders had mobilized with military precision. The Federal Council of Churches, representing millions of Protestant believers, issued statements condemning not just Mae West, but the entire entertainment industry for what they described as a systematic assault on Christian values. The Catholic Church's response was swift and severe. Cardinal Dennis Doherty of Philadelphia, one of America's most influential religious leaders, declared Mae West's performance an insult to every decent American home. Catholic publications across the nation echoed his sentiments, calling for immediate government intervention to prevent similar incidents. Women's groups, which had been gaining political power throughout the 1930s, saw Mae West's radio appearance as a betrayal of everything they had fought to achieve. The General Federation of Women's Clubs, representing over 2 million members, organized letter-writing campaigns that flooded government offices with demands for immediate action. But the most powerful opposition came from an unexpected source: other women in entertainment. Stars who had spent years carefully crafting wholesome images suddenly found themselves forced to distance themselves from Mae West's controversial performance. Studio publicity departments worked overtime to ensure their stars were seen as the right kind of women, moral, decent, and nothing like Mae West. Politicians, ever sensitive to the winds of public opinion, began positioning themselves on what was quickly becoming the defining cultural issue of the year. Senators gave speeches on the floor of Congress about the need to protect American families from the corrupting influence of Hollywood. Representatives introduced bills designed to increase government oversight of radio content. The witch hunt had begun, and Mae West found herself not just the target, but the symbol of everything that conservative America believed was wrong with modern society. She had become, in the space of 12 words, the most dangerous woman in America. Inside NBC's marble-clad headquarters, network executives faced an impossible dilemma that would define the future of American broadcasting. On one side stood their commitment to entertainment and artistic freedom, principles that had made radio the most powerful medium in American history. On the other side loomed the wrath of moral America, backed by government threats and advertiser boycotts that could destroy the network overnight. The financial calculations were staggering. Mae West's appearance had generated the highest ratings in the Chase and Sanborn Hour's history, proving that controversy could indeed translate into massive audiences. But those same massive audiences had generated equally massive outrage that threatened to cost the network millions in lost advertising revenue. Network President Lennox Lore called emergency meetings with every department head, seeking solutions to a crisis that seemed to have no good answers. The legal department warned of potential FCC sanctions that could result in license revocation, a death sentence for any broadcasting company. The advertising department reported that major sponsors were already threatening to pull their support unless immediate action was taken. But the most chilling warning came from the network's own censors, the executives whose job it was to prevent exactly this kind of incident. They had reviewed Mae West's script, they explained, and found nothing objectionable. The problem wasn't what Mae West had said. It was how she had said it. Her ability to transform innocent words into something that bypassed all their careful safeguards. How do you censor a voice? How do you regulate tone, inflection, timing, all the subtle elements that had made Mae West's performance so powerful? NBC's executives realized they were facing a challenge that went to the very heart of what entertainment could and should be in America. The solution they ultimately chose would reshape American broadcasting forever, establishing precedents that would govern radio and television content for decades to come. But first, they had to survive the immediate crisis. And that meant making Mae West disappear. The Federal Communications Commission's response to Mae West's radio appearance marked a turning point in the relationship between government and entertainment that reverberates to this day. FCC Chairman Frank McNinch, a stern former judge who had been appointed by President Franklin Roosevelt to clean up the broadcasting industry, saw Mae West's performance as the perfect opportunity to demonstrate federal authority over the airwaves. Within a week of the broadcast, the FCC launched a formal investigation that sent shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry. Government investigators descended on NBC's offices, demanding transcripts, recordings, and detailed explanations of how such content had been allowed on the air. The message was clear. The federal government would no longer tolerate what it deemed inappropriate content on America's airwaves. The investigation revealed something that stunned even seasoned Washington observers. Mae West's 12 words had generated more complaints to the FCC than any single broadcast in the Commission's history. Mailbags filled with angry letters arrived daily at the FCC's offices, each one demanding that the government take action to protect American families from similar future incidents. But the FCC's response went far beyond investigating a single incident. Chairman McNinch used Mae West's appearance as justification for implementing sweeping new censorship guidelines that would govern all future radio programming. These guidelines, developed in secret and implemented without public input, essentially gave government bureaucrats veto power over entertainment content. The implications were staggering. For the first time in American history, federal officials would have direct control over what millions of Americans could hear in their own homes. The First Amendment, which had supposedly protected freedom of speech, proved powerless against the combined forces of moral outrage and political opportunism. Mae West had become more than just a band performer. She had become the excuse for fundamentally altering the relationship between government and entertainment, creating precedents that would shape American media for generations to come. What happened next has remained one of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets for over 8 decades. According to sources who spoke only on condition of anonymity, NBC made a recording of Mae West's complete performance that December night, a recording that supposedly contained material far more controversial than what was actually broadcast. The existence of this recording was first revealed in internal NBC memos discovered decades later in corporate archives. These documents, written by network executives in the immediate aftermath of the broadcast, reference additional material that was too dangerous for public consumption and needed to be permanently secured. Industry insiders who were present that night later whispered about moments that never made it to air. Ad-libs and improvised lines that Mae West had delivered during commercial breaks. Comments so provocative that even the live studio audience had gasped in shock. Some claimed she had made explicit references to biblical health figures that would have sparked even greater outrage than what was actually broadcast. The recording's fate became the subject of intense speculation within entertainment circles. Some believed it was destroyed immediately after the FCC investigation began. Others claimed it was hidden in NBC's archives, too dangerous to destroy, but too controversial to ever acknowledge. A few insisted it had been secretly preserved by Mae West herself, kept as insurance against those who sought to silence her permanently. Perhaps most intriguingly, several former NBC employees claimed that the recording had been played at secret gatherings of entertainment industry executives, used as a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncontrolled live broadcasting. These private screenings, they said, had become legendary within Hollywood circles, forbidden fruit that only the most trusted insiders were ever allowed to taste. If such a recording truly exists, it would represent not just a historical artifact, but proof of censorship and cover-up at the highest levels of American media.